Welcome into the Wiltfong Whiparound with Steve Wiltfong. Today is Tuesday, February 18th. I am your host, Josh Newberg. We got a lot to cover today. We're going to talk Notre Dame, Miami, top quarterbacks, and we got an update on number one overall recruit Jackson Cantwell. But before we get into it, guys, do me a favor right now. Hit that subscribe button. Look at this, almost to 100K. I think we can get there. All right, we got the best insider in the entire recruiting business, Steve Wiltfong here. And Steve, before we get to Notre Dame, before we get to Miami, let's go inside the recruitment of number one running back Savion Hiter. He recently dropped 4 official visits. We got Ohio State May 30th, then we're going off to Georgia, Michigan, followed up by Tennessee on June 20th. But Steve, the question I got for you, is Savion Hiter all Michigan? Is he the Wolverines to lose?
Well, he is not all Michigan, but he is the Wolverines to lose as the process stands right now. The Maize and Blue remain the program to beat going into the next wave of visits, but Georgia and Tennessee are right there, and he is definitely keeping Ohio State warm as well. He wants to get back to Tennessee for a spring practice. He will get back to Tennessee for a spring practice on April 5th. He's trying to get to Ohio State for a spring practice and another return to Georgia for a spring practice. Georgia has gotten 3 of the last visits, including at the end of January, bleeding into early February. He was back on campus. But Michigan continues to set the tone in this recruitment. Savion said as much at the Under Armour All-America game in January. His mom said the same in an interview over the weekend. From the relationship with Tony Alford, head coach Sharon Moore, the off-field recruiting department, the resources and information that they're getting from Michigan and what they've seen their time in Ann Arbor, Michigan has shown that is a place where he can thrive on and off the field. He'll take his official visit to Michigan the weekend of June 13th. Ohio State's May 30th, Georgia's June 6th, Tennessee June 20th. Still a lot of visits coming up for Savion Hiter. Still a lot of information. Still relationships to continue building and learning about these programs. I like where Michigan stands, but Georgia, his mom said, is neck and neck. Tennessee's right there. So we'll see what happens over the next wave of visits in the spring and the summer.
Is this it? These 4 teams that we see that he's locked in official visits for, will these be the only 4 teams that he chooses from? Or is there another program or two kind of circling the waters here?
Unless something changes, these are the 4. He said as much in early January. That's still the same tune in mid-February. So he's locked in on these 4 programs. His mom said, hey, look, Savion could see himself at any of these programs. The family would be happy with any of the 4 choices. But it's Michigan still leading by an inch or 2 with Georgia, Tennessee, and Ohio State in hot pursuit.
And then what's the anticipation for a final decision? We see Tennessee's there on June 20th. That'll be a couple-day visit. Do you expect him to make a decision shortly thereafter or maybe before his senior season? Or could he take it the distance?
Well, like so many of these prospects, they're all trying to make a decision before their senior year. Okay. That's why they're lining up their officials for the summer. Same with Savion Hiter. He's already been able to get to his top schools a number of times. He's going to take at least 2 visits to some of these schools moving forward, and then he'll make his decision before his senior year.
All right, Michigan fans, how you guys feeling? We are in a new era of Michigan recruiting. Is Savion Hiter the next number 1 player at his position the Wolverines land? Let us know what you think. Major news in the recruiting world. Ethan Boobie Feaster has reclassified. Why is it significant? Because Boobie Feaster was the number 1 wide receiver in the 2027 class. He's now On3's number 9 receiver now that he's reclassified to 2026. Steve, do you think that Boobie Feaster is ready to make the jump?
Yeah, he took high school football by storm as a freshman, helping DeSoto go 16-0 and win a state championship, and was one of the toughest covers in the Lone Star State. As a sophomore, it's some of the best high school football competition. He's been exposed in workouts to some of the top receivers in the country, 2-3 years older than him. I'm never a big proponent on reclassifying, but Ethan Boobie Feaster is a prospect that's played a lot of high school football He's got one more season ahead of him to continue seasoning and growing his game, and he'll be ready from a physical standpoint to play college football in 2 years.
All right. So he recently told On3, quote, I can say, when talking about his top schools, he recently told On3, quote, I can say Oregon for sure, LSU, Texas A&M, USC, Tennessee, those are the ones that are big, end quote. So, Steve, kind of take us behind the scenes of his top schools here.
Yeah, that was us talking at the Battle South Florida event in January. He said a lot of the same things to colleague Chad Simmons over the weekend while at the Under Armour event in Dallas. There's certainly 3 programs that are setting the pace in this recruitment. He's had this official visit to USC locked in for a while, the weekend of June 6th. He told Chad over the weekend that he'll also be at LSU the weekend of June 20th. Those are 2 of the out-of-state frontrunners for Feaster. From the in-state programs, Texas A&M has the edge on the others right now, with Texas and SMU, 2 others that are on his short list at this point in his process.
So how big of a factor do you think NIL will be in this recruitment?
Well, he said as much. One of the reasons why he's reclassifying, look, he saw Ryan Williams have such a great true freshman season for Alabama. And he thought that was something he could do. But one of the other reasons is he said, so I can take care of my family earlier. So NIL is going to be a factor. Now, he also wants to be comfortable in his surroundings, play for great coaches, play in a great program. Alabama's another program that he's high on that we didn't mention this segment. But NIL is definitely one of his factors in him making his college decision. And he's going to be taking into account what kind of opportunities there are financially at each of these programs.
All right. It's early in his recruitment. Well, I mean, it's kind of early in his recruitment. He just reclassified, but he will now be a mainstay on this channel. We're going to be talking a lot about Boobie Feaster heading into the future. Let's talk a little Miami Hurricanes recruiting. The Canes are heating up on the recruiting trail. Mario Cristobal has them poised for another top 10 class, maybe top 5. And things are heating up between Jackson Cantwell and the Canes as well. Cantwell, the number 1 overall prospect offensive tackle out of Missouri. Steve, he recently named a top 6. Georgia, Miami, Michigan, Missouri, Ohio State, and Oregon. But the Canes are kind of surging here. What's the latest?
Well, they're a program that we really saw rise during the fall when he made it down to South Florida for a game visit to Miami. Loves the emphasis of offensive line within the program and the chemistry that Coach Cristobal and Coach Mirabal have together. And he's coming back for a spring visit to continue learning more about Miami. Miami is a program that made the top 6, but I would not have put them at the top of the top 6. But there's a lot of runway for the Hurricanes to make a move here with a spring practice visit, continuing to build those relationships with the staff, then a return for an official visit in the summer before he makes his decision before his senior season. So Jackson Cantwell is going to get back to some of these schools that he hasn't been to as much as the others. So he's going to go to Miami, then he's going to fly up and hit Ohio State and then Michigan again before returning back home and continuing his focus on winning another national championship in the shot put. He set the sophomore national record in the shot put last year while winning the high school national championship overall. He finished 4th in the discus, Josh, setting a sophomore national record at the time, but finished 4th in the overall. He's got the indoor national championships in New York before he will head down to Miami, then up to Michigan and Ohio State. Miami trying to head up in this recruitment, and they're going to get an opportunity to continue that trajectory here in the spring.
Yeah, and this is a vital visit for the Canes because, like you said, he made that visit during the season, and it went really well. He had a lot of great things to say about Mario Cristobal and his staff, but if you don't see him make it back in the spring, then this recruitment might get away from Miami, but they got him back, and they'll probably get him in for an official, so things are heading in the right direction. Speaking about the right direction, another top prospect locks in a visit this spring. Number 6 running back Javian Osborne out of Forney, Texas. Where do the Canes stand with him?
Well, similar to Jackson Cantwell, I think they're trying to move up the list. Michigan, Texas, those are programs that have been very prominent in his recruitment. Georgia is one that is on the rise after a visit earlier this year. But Miami's been recruiting them hard. He talked about the coaches in the environment. He feels like he can thrive in the offense that they have at Miami. And he talked about Matt Merritt, the position coach, a guy that could be developed by one of the best. He pointed to Matt Merritt, this kind of reputation that he has with Javian Osborne. He also likes the emphasis of the offensive line on the program. From the head coach, Mario Cristobal, said that's a recipe for success. So Miami's in the middle of this one. We'll see what happens after that official visit. We'll see if they can get him there in the spring, similar to Cantwell, ahead of these official visits. He's got Michigan planned at the end of June. They're certainly at the top of his list. Texas is a program he's always been high on. He'll be back there in June. And then SMU in May is another visit on his itinerary.
All right, well, we can't talk Miami without talking Jalen Waters. One of the top prospects in the state of Florida has been committed to Florida State. Then in June, he committed to the Gators. Over the weekend, he decommitted, and he is currently trending to the Canes. Can the Canes land Waters' third commitment of this cycle?
No question. They're the program trending. That was the buzz at the Battle South Florida 7-on-7 event in January. And with this decommitment from Florida, it was easy to log an on-3 RPM in favor of Miami to give the current pulse on this recruitment. But this has obviously been a recruitment that's been very fluid. So I don't know if you even want his commitment right now. You certainly wouldn't say no to it. Jalen Walters has got some high upside physical traits from the size, length, speed, change of direction, ability, a tenacious football player out there on the perimeter. But these programs have been very, what's the word, Josh? He's been
easily swayed.
Swayed. Or, well, that's not the right word. Influenced or what have you. You know, obviously, these programs have been able to make an impact on him with each visit. You're a Florida native. Have you seen a prospect be committed to all three of the big three at any point in their process?
I've seen it a few times, and being from the state of Florida, having been out at some of these spring practices and things of that such, one of the sayings that you'll hear on the sidelines from college coaches is when you hear a guy, oh, he's committed to so-and-so, the coach will look at him and say, well, I'm trying to get his third commitment. Because they know that these guys in Florida kind of bounce around, and one commitment generally doesn't do it for some of the top players in the state of Florida. They want their third commitment. So Jalen Waters getting close to hitting on that third commitment. Let's talk a little Notre Dame recruiting right now, because the Irish, we didn't really get to hit on this, Steve, the last time we were on the show, but the Irish had a monster junior day right before the dead period hit. And I want to know, what's the latest buzz coming out of South Bend after that big junior day?
Well, Notre Dame just hired a new general manager, Mike Martin, to replace Chad Bowden, who took a position at USC. So we'll see with his keen eye for talent if Notre Dame's board changes at all and what kind of influence he has on Notre Dame's class here in 2026. But a couple weeks ago at Junior Day, Notre Dame hosted some top targets at the time, and I like where the Irish stand for several of these names. That list starts with 4-star linebacker Jacoby Clapper from Cincinnati St. Xavier. He's an on 300 recruit that's been in the South Bend a bunch. I think he'll come back here in the spring. I think Notre Dame is setting the pace in his recruitment, and my on 3 RPM reflects that. Notre Dame's already landed one commit from that weekend, Josh. Tyler Merrill jumped in the fold for the Irish, choosing ND over Clemson, Penn State, Alabama, Wisconsin, and others. He did his commitment with us on the On 3 Recruits channel. So make sure you hit like and subscribe so you're up to date on those developments. The number 3 safety in the country is Simeon Caldwell. He's been to Notre Dame a couple times out of the Sunshine State NFL pedigree in Simeon Caldwell's family. He was the last prospect that Marcus Freeman met with on Junior Day, him and his mother. He also spent an hour talking football with linebackers coach Bulla. No question Notre Dame is one of the favorites for Simeon Caldwell, if not the favorite. I also think Notre Dame is setting the pace for 4-star receiver Caden Finley. We've talked about that on the show before with the playmaker from the Lone Star State. So like where Notre Dame stands there, same with receiver Braden Robinson, 4-star pass catcher out of Red Oak. I think that Notre Dame is the leader going into his summer official visits. Jonas Walton is the number 4 running back in the country, Josh. He just put out his top 10 over the weekend. I have Notre Dame in prime position in that recruitment with the likes of Alabama in Tennessee and Florida. But he's going to come back on an official visit. Him and his family, they loved all the historic feel on the Notre Dame campus. They talked about the movie Rudy with me. Certainly loved the trajectory of Jeremiah Love being a Heisman candidate this coming year. So Notre Dame in a really good spot there. 4-star offensive lineman Evan Goodwin. Notre Dame's going to have a really good chance to sign. And defensive lineman Ebenezer Ewatati was offered during his visit to Notre Dame for Junior Day. They're going to battle the likes of Georgia for him, but Notre Dame's certainly one of the front runners in that recruitment as well.
Great intel from Junior Day, but Steve, who else are the Irish trending for early in this 26 cycle?
Well, keep an eye on Notre Dame for one of their top pass rushers, Rodney Dunham Jr. He's going to come up in the spring for a spring practice out of North Carolina. They're in a SEC type battle for Rodney Dunham, who wants to get to Georgia. South Carolina, Tennessee are two of his favorites. I think that Notre Dame is one of the favorites for Elijah Golden, a defensive lineman out of the Sunshine State. Joey O'Brien is a 4-star safety from Pennsylvania that they're right in the thick of it for with Clemson and Penn State. My on-3 RPM's on Penn State, but there is confidence when you talk to sources around South Bend that, of their position with Joey O'Brien. Same goes with edge rusher Samodi Katoanga from J. Sarah Catholic. His teammate Madden Faramo signed with the Irish over USC and others in the 2025 class. Notre Dame trying to beat USC, Oregon, Ohio State, and others for Samoti. Trent Mosley is a 4-star receiver and Notre Dame legacy. Both his parents played sports for the Irish. His mom, one of the best soccer players in program history. His dad, Emmett, played football at Notre Dame. They're going to battle USC, Stanford, and others for him. So Notre Dame in the thick of it for many of the nation's best. Connor Salmon's a receiver that can really fly that they would love to add. He's also high on Clemson, Penn State, Virginia Tech. But Mikhail Blades, a defensive lineman from Illinois, that Notre Dame's going to have an excellent chance to sign. They're in the top 3 for Gregory Patrick, a 4-star offensive lineman from Michigan. He's from Portage Northern. His dad played at Michigan State, but Portage Northern is actually closer to the South Bend campus than it is Michigan or Michigan State. So there's Notre Dame. They're in the lead group for a lot of top targets this cycle. And we'll see what this spring brings as far as visitors to the Irish campus.
Yeah, man. You can just feel the momentum around Notre Dame recruiting right now. So Irish fans, talk to Steve and I. Who do you feel like is one of the most important targets for Notre Dame to land this cycle? Let us know. Let's talk some quarterback recruiting, because in the class of 2026, I can feel that these top 10 QBs, it's going to get crazy. So let's start with Jonas Williams, who's currently committed to Oregon. But Steve, I read one of your articles up on on3.com, and you said, quote, I expect him to sign elsewhere. So Steve, tell us more about Jonas Williams.
Well, these are just some housekeeping topics for us, Josh. We've talked about it on the Whiparounds and the Inside Scoops. So people need to hit like and subscribe if they're not up to date. But Jonas Williams committed to Oregon. He's been talking heavily with USC and LSU, and I think when all said and done, it's more likely that he ends up with the Trojans or Tigers than it is he signs with the Ducks. But Oregon wants to sign 2 quarterbacks this cycle. They are still going hard to keep Jonas in the fold and make him comfortable with his original decision.
All right, so speaking of Oregon, the fans want to know, Steve, when are you dropping that prediction for number 1 quarterback Jared Curtis to the Ducks?
Well, his recruitment's been so fluid with who's on top, and he's having great dialogue with Oregon, and I like where the Ducks stand. But Georgia is a program he continues to keep very warm. Was committed to Georgia at one point. Still having great dialogue with Coach Bobo, Montgomery Van Gorder, Kirby Smart, and the staff. So that relationship with Georgia, how fluid this recruitment's been as he weighs going far away from home to a place like Oregon. That is why I have not jumped on that pick. But if you were making me pick today, I would pick Oregon for Jared Curtis. Loves Will Stein, loves the vibe around the program, loves the opportunity to get in there and compete early for some playing time, depending on what happens with Dante Moore following this season. He'll be draft eligible. So Oregon's got a lot of great things going in this recruitment. Dan Lanning has blown the family away. Again, the attention, how comfortable he's been in Eugene. I give them the lead right now, but Georgia's right there. South Carolina remains more than a dark horse. Then you got Alabama, Auburn, and a few others that he's still talking to as well.
All right, staying in this top 10, Rider Lions to USC.
Again, just a housekeeping topic for us here. Nothing changed there. My pick's obviously on USC, but Oregon is very much a contender. Rider Lions is being viewed as a 2027 recruit as he's planning to take an LDS mission. That puts him at the top of the 2027 boards. BYU is very much in there. Michigan's a program that's starting to heat up for him as well.
All right, how about Landon Duckworth? He seems like right now, is it trending toward Ole Miss heavily?
Well, he had a great visit to Ole Miss here before the dead period and loves Lane Kiffin, Charlie Weiss Jr., the offense, the way they develop Jackson Dart, the way they build things around their quarterback. He feels he could be very successful in Oxford, but there's a few other schools that are catching his eye. Florida State's one of them, has a great relationship with Gus Malzahn, almost committed to him while he was at UCF. South Carolina is a program he was committed to at one point. They're in the picture. And Georgia recently offered. He loves this. He's loved time he spent in Athens in the past and is feeling like a priority with the Georgia staff.
All right. Now, what about number 15 ranked quarterback Oscar Rios? It looks like he is locked in with a visit to Colorado. Is this Coach Prime's top target at the quarterback position in 2026?
Well, I'm not sure what their board looks like exactly, but it's obviously a guy that they're keyed in on, and he's going to visit June 20th. So that's setting up for his last visit of the summer. He'll also be at Utah on June 6th. You have Oklahoma State in the picture, Arizona. All those programs have official visits set in for Rios, who over the last two seasons has thrown for over 5,000 yards and 45 touchdowns. He's also a threat with his legs, 11 rushing scores last season for Rios. He is a guy that Colorado is definitely pushing for at the position. And that will do it for today's episode of the Wiltfong Whiparound. Thanks for tuning in. Please hit like and subscribe to the On3 Recruits channel for the latest and best information from the recruiting trail. And we'll see you next time for another episode of the Wiltfong Whiparound.